1.
Red flag. Red flag's to slow down.
What? The checkered flag is waiting.
I can see our Checkered Flag podcast being quite spicy.
5 Live's Checkered Flag podcast.
Qualifying for the Singapore Grand Prix has just finished, and it was an entertaining evening, I have to say. We went into it with high expectations, and we're going to find out whether our expectations were met, because I'm joined by the team, our lead commentator Harry Benjamin, and the Formula E driver for McLaren, Sam Bird. Harry, did you enjoy that qualifying session? It saw Lando Norris on pole position at the end of it.
It did, I did. And it was kind of expected, in a way, that Norris was going to get pole. I think the bigger stories were Verstappen sort of seemingly overcoming Red Bull's expected problems. And, I mean, what a disaster for Ferrari. 9th and 10th, and we'll come on to that. Sainz crashing out, leaving us with a red flag in Q3. So we had a little bit of everything in that final stage of qualifying, but it does tee us up for a good Grand Prix on Sunday.
Sam, did you like what you saw, and will you be turning up for more come race day?
Did I enjoy
Aren't you
what I
contractually obliged
saw?
to turn up for more?
I loved what I saw. Of course, there's a papaya car on pole position. So, yeah, really, really great for Lando, obviously. Intriguing for many different reasons, I found this qualifying session, as I'm sure we will get into, Rosanna.
We certainly will. As I said, Lando Norris on pole position. Max Verstappen will start alongside him on the front row, P2 for the Red Bull driver, and then it was Sir Lewis Hamilton in P3. And normally we would hear from our pole sitter straight away, but since the checkered flag flew at the end of qualifying, there's been an interesting development. The top 3 drivers are requested to go to the FIA press conference to talk to the media, and it all got a little bit, I think intriguing is the word actually, Sam. And I've brought in our F1 BBC correspondent Andrew Benson, because he was there. Andrew, what happened?
Well, initially Max Verstappen was giving really short answers to the questions, and now everyone realised very quickly that was in protest at what had happened to him yesterday when he was given a penalty for swearing in the press conference on Thursday. He's been ordered to do effectively some community service to be agreed with the FIA as to what that content is. Anyway, so these answers they just weren't coming. And so I was in the media centre initially listening to the press conference. So I ran into the press conference room and stuck my hand up, and I asked him if he'd talk to us outside the room, and he gave me a thumbs up. And then I asked Lewis Hamilton and Lando Norris what they thought of Verstappen being punished, and Norris said he thought it was pretty unfair and didn't agree with any of it, and Hamilton said it was a bit of a joke, to be honest, and he hopes that Verstappen doesn't do whatever the FIA come up with him to do. So we then all had a big scrum with Verstappen outside.
Scrum being a nice thing in F1. That sounds a little bit like you're out on the rugby pitch, but actually, yes. Scrum is what you do, isn't it, with the other media?
Right, so I was kind of negotiating with Verstappen. I was like, what can we talk here? And he was fine with it, but the FIA sort of media handler was going, no, he's got to go to the TV pen, and Max was going, but are you guys going to come to the TV pen? And I was like, well, ideally not. And he says, well, let's just stand in the corridor then. And I said, well, they said you can't stand in the corridor. And he said, well, let's walk and do it then.
This is your F1 water cooler moment. I love
exactly.
this.
So there's a few of us walking down the paddock with Verstappen and the Red Bull PR woman, Anna. I trod on her heels a couple of times while we were walking, and so it was all a bit bad. Anyway, he basically said he thought it was ridiculous what had happened to him, and why should he talk in the press conference if he was going to get a fine or some kind of penalty? So I preferred not to speak. I asked him why he thought he'd been punished, and he said they wanted to set a precedent. Other people had got warnings or perhaps been given a fine, but they wanted to set a bigger example with him, which he said he thought was weird, because he hadn't sworn directly at anybody. He understood that, that swearing at somebody or being rude to someone wasn't acceptable, but he thought what he'd done wasn't wrong. He just used a bad word to describe his car, basically. And he also made it clear that he wasn't blaming the stewards, because he felt they were sort of forced into punishing him because that's what the International Sporting Code demands. He actually said he'd had a really good chat with them. Now, he didn't directly say who he was blaming, but it's very obvious, because all this started because Mohammed Ben Sulayem, the FIA president, gave an interview to Autosport in which he said he wanted that swear words not to be broadcast on television anymore, on team radio. Now, the thing is, they're not broadcast, are they? They're bleeped out. So Ben Sulayem was kind of thinking he doesn't want the world to see that people in Formula One swear, effectively. And the drivers collectively all think this is a bit daft. It's pretty clear. Verstappen said he'd had a lot of support from the other drivers. And that's actually where it all started. That's why Verstappen, I think, was behaving a little bit like that on Thursday in the first news conference. So it's all kind of spiraled out of control. And here we are, Rosanna. It's been one of the more entertaining post-qualifying episodes, I have to say.
Another subplot, another headline from 2024 and the F1 season. Sam, I'm going to come to you on this one because you know what it's like to be driving, out there in anger, visors down. We say that drivers change a little bit when the visor goes down. Obviously, this was in a press conference where Max Verstappen used a swear word, but you know what it's like. Do you agree with the punishment that Max Verstappen's been given? And, I don't even know, is there a further punishment to come if you only use one-word answers in a press conference? I don't know. What's your take on this, Sam?
No, I think it's the whole thing is ludicrous, and I think the FIA have given the wrong punishment, to be honest. I would have much preferred if they felt the need to punish him, which is already, I think, a little bit ridiculous. I would have preferred to have seen some, a fine and that money go to charity. We are, especially in the race cars, when you hear it on the radio, A, you don't hear it because it's bleeped, but secondly, if you know what we are saying, yes, there are beep words, there are swear words there, but our heart rate's at 160. We're fueled by passion and desire to do well. That's what sport is all about, that passion and that willingness to succeed, and all sportsmen do it at some point. That's just a fact. I think that the FIA need to figure out where they're going with this and what they need to do in the future, but you're never going to stamp it out. And I think community service is the wrong thing, personally.
And look, okay, swearing is what it is. We don't do it, obviously. We're live on air, but we are able to filter ourselves because our heart rate isn't going at, maybe mine when at the start of a race, but is not going at 160 beats per minute. But I just think this is another ridiculous thing that is now becoming a headline story, and we should be talking about qualifying, but we're talking about this. Come on.
Well, let's talk about qualifying then, shall we? Because whilst Max Verstappen was a little taciturn in the press conference proper, as you've heard, he had a chat in the corridor with Andrew Benson. He actually did come to the media pen and he had lots to say about how the car's feeling, how his weekend's going, and how it might go come the Grand Prix itself.
I think the whole qualifying, that was still a bit tight, I would say, to get on the front row. Because I think the whole qualifying, we never really saw the strength of the McLaren with Lando. He did the fast lap on scrub tires in Q1. Then Q2, I think he didn't put the lap in properly. So, I think for us, being P2 is the best we could have hoped for. And especially if you look at our weekend so far, being P2 is much better than I anticipated this morning when I woke up.
Are you, would you say, driving around the car's issues, or have those issues actually started to clear up?
Well, we know our limitations always on street circuits. We tried to work on it, and I think we optimized this as much as we could. So the team did a great job overnight also to understand our limitations and try to work with it, basically, and try to optimize everything. So, I think we maximized it.
That was Max Verstappen talking to me a little earlier on. He'll start from P2. I think a much better result for him and Red Bull than they were fearing perhaps coming into this weekend. We know this circuit doesn't suit their car with the bumpiness and the curbs. We've let Andrew Benson, our F1 correspondent, head back to the media centre to write his stories after what was a bit of a frenetic qualifying session. So let's now turn our attention back to our pole sitter, Lando Norris in the McLaren. What an effort from him. He said it was a difficult lap, a difficult car to drive this evening, Harry, but wowee, he put it on pole, and that is vital, even though he'll start alongside his title rival, Max Verstappen. But he needs this win, doesn't he? That's what's really important.
He does. 2 tenths clear at the top come the end of Q3, but you know what, he was quick out the blocks all weekend long. He was the pick from pole right from Friday onwards, but as you say, that 59-point gap that there is between Verstappen and Norris, and this is a crucial weekend, and you know what, I think Norris and McLaren will be a little bit annoyed at the fact that Verstappen stuck it on the front row, because we're all coming into this weekend expecting this of all the tracks, regardless of where Red Bull have been anyway in their seeming downturn in performance. We expected this track, much like last year, to be their bogey circuit because they can't ride the curves. They struggle with the bumps and the bouncing. But he's put it on the front row. So Norris needs to get a good start, and we know that's something that hasn't come his way. Ironically, last time out he had a good start from 15th on the grid, but now he's on the front row. Verstappen will be alongside him, and pole here is on the left-hand side as you're the driver, so he'll have a slight advantage. He'll have that inside line coming down towards turn 1. So that's what he needs to focus on. Good start and outscore Verstappen. He can only do so much. If Verstappen finishes second, it's not enough points that Norris takes away from him come Sunday evening, but all he can do is go out and win it, but he's got to do that on Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, it's critical. 178 metres from pole to turn 1, and a lot could happen in those 178 metres, Sam. You've raced around here. How do you approach a start when you've got your title rival breathing down your neck or even going wheel to wheel with you?
It's difficult, isn't it? Lando, he's been on pole so many times this year. I think it's his 5th this year, 6th overall in his Formula One career. And am I right in saying that every single one of them he has not led the end of that first lap? So, look, people speak about it. He is fully capable, though, of getting to that first corner in the lead. If he does, he could have a lonely afternoon or evening. Definitely evening. I hope he does, but I think Max is going to be very, very tempted to try and take the lead into that turn 1, that's for sure, and then try and control the race himself.
Well, let's hear from Lando Norris. P1 for the British driver. Can he hang on to that and take the checker flag to take a win around this very challenging track?
Pole position is always a nice thing, and another one for me. So a good day. We've been quick all weekend. So I'm happy. I feel it's probably a little bit tougher than what I would like. Competition closed up a lot coming into qualifying, so I had to push on a little bit more, and it was just, I kind of found the limit of what the car was able to do, and became quite difficult to drive. But nevertheless, we're still on pole, so I'm happy. I guess I was trying to find something to complain about or be not satisfied with, but I am satisfied with today.
And I guess you weren't probably expecting it to be Max Verstappen alongside you on the front row. Does that fluster you slightly when it comes to how the race may go?
No, I mean, if you didn't expect Max to improve a bit for quali, then you're not too smart, are you? So they were very quick and already in FP3, but of course people just look at the timing sheets and go, oh, they're slow, but don't actually look at the data and look as why. And that's just because they were saving a bit and didn't turn the engine up and those kind of things. So for the people that actually are interested and look in the data, then they would have known actually Red Bull are quite quick. For the people that just look at a screen and just want to guess and make opinions for no reason, then they're probably being correct.
Lando Norris, I'm not sure whether he was putting me in my place or maybe some others that have commented on perhaps the gap that there was going to be between Lando Norris and Max Verstappen, and then didn't prove to be this evening, because Lando Norris, guys, he thought that it would be Max Verstappen right up there. He'd obviously been looking at the data and knew that actually the Red Bulls were faster than it perhaps appeared on the surface. But Sam, I'm interested by what you said. You think he may end up, if he can hold on to the lead off the start, he may end up having a lonely evening. Is that because you think their race pace is super strong and he's just going to canter off into the distance?
Well, we've seen it before recently with Lando, haven't we? Especially in Zandvoort, where he took the lead from Max Verstappen and then disappeared off into the distance. Now, Zandvoort is quite a high downforce circuit, as is Singapore in many respects. So I think the McLaren can hold on to its tyre better than the Red Bull. So yeah, I think if he can hold on to the lead for the first sort of 10-12 laps of the race, I think we'll see Lando gently start to pull away from the rest of the field. But that's speculation. I think that their long run pace was very strong, but we will find out, Rosanna.
We will, and it of course doesn't really matter how many seconds you cross the line ahead of Max Verstappen if you're Lando Norris. It's about how many points you score, and he's going to be surely gunning for that fastest lap if indeed he is out front to try and maximise what he takes home. It's going to be an interesting first part of the Grand Prix, it really is. And then behind those two, Lando Norris and Max Verstappen on the front row, it's Lewis Hamilton, P3, lining up alongside his teammate George Russell. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I did not expect a Mercedes second row, given what's been a very up and down weekend so far for them.
Yeah, from feeling lost, really, after practice for Lewis Hamilton, surprisingly, they lock out the second row. Hamilton, equally surprisingly, ahead of George Russell. He's only done that, well, this will be the 5th time he's done that this season. Russell has had the match on him so far in qualifying, and we only have to go back to the Italian Grand Prix, where Hamilton was so downbeat after qualifying because he just seemed to lose pace throughout the weekend and not have an answer. I think he felt like he could have put it on pole in Monza, and I remember coming out with a bit of a quip on his part, but saying, you know, maybe they'll have better luck with when Kimi Antonelli takes over in qualifying. And this is Lewis Hamilton. He's clearly not happy with the way that car has been going. We know Russell too has been on the radio hell for leather this weekend, talking about how much the tyres have been changing and the characteristics of them from session to session. So to come away with a front row, with a second row lockout, I think is a pretty good recovery for Mercedes, Sam.
Yeah, a great recovery for Mercedes, but I don't think they fully understand how or why they're on the second row. It seems like every session is different to the session before, and you never know whether they're going to be competitive or really struggling, or kind of a bit of both, as we saw in FP3. We saw Russell locking up on so many occasions, yet he preferred the balance in FP3 to what we saw in qualifying. I don't know what Mercedes is ever going to turn up at the moment. And with regards to Lewis Hamilton doubting his qualifying, I mean, the guy's had over 100 pole positions, I think it is, in Formula One. So he is the master of qualifying. Okay, this year hasn't been his greatest qualifying, but great to see him on form today.
Well, he did, didn't he, in the Parc Fermé interview straight after the qualifying session. He did say that his qualifying's been a disaster all year long, so that's what I wanted to talk to him about when he came to the media pen. This is what Lewis Hamilton had to say.
You just wouldn't believe the struggle and what we've been through to try and get something like this, get the car in a better place and be up there. I'm so happy and just very thankful for the position to be up there and be in the mix. After the last two, all of yesterday and this morning, I was a second and 1.2 seconds off. So with the changes we made, for us to now be just 0.3 off, that's a huge leap in the right direction. And it's just those days when you're like, don't give up, and keep trying, even though every time you fail, it will eventually come. So you just got to keep on it.
I hate to be pessimistic, but because of the way the car behaves, is there a slight danger that it could be different tomorrow?
It will be different tomorrow. I mean, it's been every time we've been out today, this weekend, it's been so different. We've changed so much. We've been left, right, up, down, all over. But I think now that it is working better, it is a much better platform. I think hopefully than tomorrow with the controls we have, maybe we should be able to. I hope we can put it in a bit of better window for the long run, and try and hold on to these guys.
Guys, Lewis Hamilton was buoyed up in the media pen, but I did say I didn't want to put any pessimism out there in the universe, but as you said, Sam, we just never know which Mercedes is going to turn up, and it can switch from one day to the next. So a good quali car might not be a good race car, but they have two of them up against the lone rangers of Max Verstappen for Red Bull and Lando Norris for McLaren. So perhaps there is a strategic advantage for Mercedes if they can keep up with the race pace of the front two. What do you reckon?
Well, you say lone rangers of Norris and Verstappen. I don't think necessarily Norris is a lone ranger. Piastri is right there as well.
Fifth.
Yeah, okay, but just behind them. So he's in the mix. He's in the conversation for a podium. Verstappen very much so on his own with no help. So I don't know what to make of Mercedes at all, to be honest, Rosanna. I still don't. Even if
they're lost, we're lost.
No, but if they converge on, and they have converged on their setup, then are they both going to be quick? Are they both going to be slow? Are they going to struggle with their tyres? Are they going to be great with their tyres? Honestly, I think every weekend has been very, very different for them, and I don't know where they're going to be going with their pace tomorrow.
Yeah, it's a watch this space moment, isn't it?
Indeed.
It
Indeed
is.
it is, Rosanna, indeed.
You know what will be worrying for them, though, going into the race? That I think they'll just be hoping that they are able to either keep pace or move forward, because more often than not in the last few rounds they kind of, while they've showed good form, and again I go back to Monza in particular, they were good in qualifying. Hamilton should have been on the front row at least, I think, and they fell back during the race. I know Russell got damaged, but still they weren't sure why they were losing pace. And they seem to have had this click earlier on the season, and suddenly Mercedes were back and they found their North Star, and now it's just fading a little bit away, but it's still better than where they were at the start of the year.
Yeah, for me, if they have a clean race with a reasonable strategy, I think that they will be able to race and potentially beat Ferrari, who, let's face it, had a dismal day at the office.
They did. They had a terrible day in the office. So we will just rattle through the rest of the top 10 to get to Ferrari. That's how bad a day it was. Oscar Piastri, as I mentioned, P5. Then it was Nico Hülkenberg. What? In the Haas, P6. An absolutely brilliant Saturday evening for him. I think Haas tweeted saying they're king of qualifying, something like that, I think. He'd done it again. Fernando Alonso in the Aston Martin P7 ahead of Yuki Tsunoda out qualifying his teammate Daniel Ricciardo. We'll come on to that a little later. And then we have Ferrari. P9 for Charles Leclerc on account of a lap time being deleted for track limits, and then Carlos Sainz crashing in the final part of qualifying. An absolutely terrible evening in the office for Ferrari, guys. What can they do from there?
Well, as I said, Rosanna, I think that they'll be fighting Mercedes for kind of maybe 4th, 5th, 6th. I can't see them getting too much higher than that. But yeah, tough day at the office. Charles Leclerc going over track limits by millimetres in turn 1. Carlos Sainz crashing before he'd even started his push lap. But even the pace wasn't there, Rosanna. Like the lap that Charles Leclerc did was only good enough for being behind Nico Hülkenberg. So that either shows how brilliant a job Nico Hülkenberg did, which is very true, or how disappointing Ferrari were this afternoon. And I think it's probably a bit of a mixture.
It was disappointing. Just to pick up on Carlos Sainz and that bizarre crash in the final corner, can you just describe it to us, Sam, and why he crashed in the way he did?
So Carlos Sainz was in sector 3. Now, when a car behind is on a flying lap, you need to get out of their way. If you don't, you run a risk of getting penalised, or you will get penalised. He's moved over to the inside of the track, the infamous inside of turn 17, where Nelson Piquet Jr. found the wall all those years ago. Now he's nearly slowed to a stop, which is then cooling the rear tyre. He's then pushed into turn 18, downshift, and then gone back on the throttle hard through 18 to exit and get a good start to the lap. But in doing so, mid to high range of the rev range, he's had an oversteer. He's tried to catch it while keeping his foot, what looks like, buried to the floor, in the hope that then he could continue, that the downforce would help him and he could continue to start the lap. But he's overcorrected, and then it swung him round and he's hit the wall. Ferrari have got a lot of work on through the night. I don't know the extent of the damage, but from the camera angles that we saw, it looked really, really expensive and extensive. We don't know whether there's going to be any grid drops due to changes of gearboxes and things like that.
Yeah, luckily Carlos Sainz was fine. As you say, the car maybe not so. Let's hear what he had to say about how the accident happened.
Well, I've been struggling all weekend really with getting the tire in the right window, opening the lap, and there I had to let by a couple of cars at the end of the lap, and I had a just very little grip launching the lap. It surprised me how dirty and how cold my tires were after having to let by a couple of cars, and I did a very simple driver error, which it's unfortunate.
I was only allowed to ask Carlos Sainz one question, and that was because he was being hurried along to go to the stewards. But as he walked away, I asked him, could it be a pit lane start? And he just shrugged and put his hands in the air. And Harry, he was going to the stewards because the saga didn't stop there. The car was broken. He then headed back to the pits, and that's what's got him in trouble this evening, hasn't it?
Yeah, there was no zebra crossing, so he had to cross the track without permission during qualifying, and the stewards have deemed that is against the sporting regulations, and deemed that was unsafe, because although Carlos Sainz's pleading with the stewards was that he crossed where the red flag was, so presumed there would be no more cars out on track, there were still cars circulating, and the possibility of one of the cars making a mistake and not coming into the pit lane at the end was too much for him to get away scot-free. So Sainz is fined €25,000, 12,500 of which is suspended for the remainder of the season on condition that there is no further breach of a similar nature. That is less than what Lewis Hamilton got fined for the same grievance in Qatar last year, after which the FIA did say they would look into the penalty for that incident, but clearly that is still a penalty. They've just reduced the fine slightly, so bad to worse for Carlos Sainz on that front.
Yeah, still a lot of money. He's obviously going to look both ways.
Rosanna, Sam has got his head in his hands.
I'm sorry.
Ridiculous?
Look,
is that what you're thinking?
You've got to get back somehow, right?
I'm a current racing driver that is organised and run by the FIA, and a lot of the things that they do are superb, and they've built our sport to what it is today, which is an incredible thing. But there's some things where I want to bury my head a little bit.
And then Carlos Sainz swore at the stewards afterwards, and all of a sudden...
That didn't happen.
Yeah. Anyway.
That didn't happen. Well, we will wait and see where he starts the Singapore Grand Prix from. But yeah, a tricky evening in Singapore for Sainz and Ferrari. Behind them, Alex Albon, P11, ahead of his new teammate, or should I say new now? I mean, he's been here a couple of races. Franco Colapinto, P12. So a good showing for Williams. I think they both thought there was more in the tank there. Sergio Perez, P13, a big scalp in Q2. I mean, we know we were expecting some challenges this weekend, but he's qualified in the same spot as he did this time last year, so nothing's changed.
I just wonder if it highlights the Verstappen effect and how he can maybe get that car into places where it shouldn't be.
Yeah, Verstappen is world-class, stunning, the fastest guy out there. You'd argue right now you'd put Lando Norris and potentially Leclerc, Hamilton into the discussion, but recently Verstappen's been the fastest guy out there by a distance, and he's able to extract more from that car than Sergio Perez. End of topic, really. He is a lot quicker on one lap pace.
The slight issue is I'm sure Singapore was another race that everyone was saying would be another deadline for Sergio Perez. So, P13, if it is indeed a deadline, it's not looking great. Behind him, Kevin Magnussen, P14, ahead of Esteban Ocon, the first of the Alpines. Really difficult evening for them as well. And then Daniel Ricciardo, P16, missing out on the second part of qualifying. And I fear for Daniel Ricciardo. Let's hear what he said to me in the media pen, because, I'd been watching him make his way around the media pen, and he'd been smiling, and that's what I asked him about first.
No, this time it's not a smile. This is I will admit once it's a fake smile. This one is not. It's not a genuine one. So, yesterday was good, today wasn't, and I think that's a frustrating thing. We were genuinely competitive yesterday, and I felt like we really had a chance today to do something quite magnificent, but every soft I used today I was just nowhere, and that's still a little bit of a lack of understanding at this stage why we couldn't find a lap time. So not sure.
That wasn't your last qualifying session in F1, was it?
We'll see.
We'll see the answer then that Daniel Ricciardo gave me about perhaps this being his last ever F1 qualifying session. Disappointing? Were we sort of expecting it? I mean, it's just been one thing after the other for poor Ricciardo, hasn't it?
I think what will be worse for Daniel Ricciardo once again is that Yuki Tsunoda out-qualified him, and Tsunoda got into the top 10 and qualified 8th. Look, it's not surprising. Ricciardo has been under pressure pretty much all season long. It kind of died down in the middle of the season while Red Bull were having their own problems with the car, and Perez and Tsunoda, being given a contract already for next year ahead of Ricciardo. Daniel Ricciardo is a phenomenal driver and will go down as one of the sport's best, personally and on track. But unfortunately, in this new era of car, since he joined McLaren, he's not been the same driver as he once was when he was starting out, and of course in his heyday with Red Bull, and even in the early stages when he was with Renault as well, getting onto the podium. And it's just not panned out well for him. We may well see Liam Lawson in the car after this little break. It feels like, according to the rumour, contractually, these are the dates of the year when decisions have to be made. Red Bull need to do something with Liam Lawson, otherwise we hear he's free to go elsewhere. They clearly rate him and want him in a car. And who's the driver that's not performing at the moment? It's Daniel Ricciardo.
Yeah, motorsport is ruthless, I think. Being a top-line athlete, it's a ruthless game. If you're not performing, the bosses will find somebody else that will potentially perform instead of you. So, yeah, unfortunately, it's Daniel Ricciardo. But he's had a wonderful career in Formula One, won multiple races, made a lot of money. Yeah, he'll be missed, but I'm sure he will find something else that's fun to do if he were to be leaving Formula One. But it's all speculation currently, isn't it?
It is, but you know what? RB need two drivers scoring points in this tough midfield battle. If they got a Tsunoda in 8th, well, then you would expect the other car to be 9th or 7th, right? And they need to score points against Haas, against Alpine, against Williams. And I suppose the bottom line is, if Tsunoda can get in there, why can't Ricciardo? And then that's where the question mark comes, isn't it? So it's a shame, because Ricciardo started the weekend off well, up in the top 10 in practice, but unfortunately just didn't come together in qualifying for him. Maybe he can have a stellar race, who knows, and turn it all around. That's the beauty of Formula One. We can talk about a driver's future being on the cusp of ending their career in Formula One weekend, but then they have one good result, and then suddenly we all change our tune and go, they're a champion of the future.
As Sam said, obviously nothing set in stone at the moment. It is all conjecture, but Daniel Ricciardo did cut a pretty disappointed figure in the media pen after qualifying. Behind him, Lance Stroll, P17, then Pierre Gasly, and then the two Saubers, Valtteri Bottas and Zhou Guanyu. So come on then, guys, what's your prediction for the Grand Prix? Who's going to win it? Do you reckon there might be some sort of interruptions? What are you hoping for or expecting?
I think that monitor lizard
is going to
might win the race.
Well, I jinxed qualifying, didn't I? So I sort of said we're having a nice smooth run, and then boom, signs in the wall. So my bad on that one. So I think it'll be a smooth race, but I think Norris will lose the lead at the start, but he'll win it.
Well, look, there's been weather around, so weather could play a part, as we've seen previously. I think that the safety car hasn't been used recently. I think that will be... I do hope and think that McLaren are going to have a great result. Behind Lando and Oscar, I really don't know what the order could be. I think Max will be in the discussion. No one knows what Mercedes' pace will be like. Ferrari will stage a fight back. I'm going to say Hülkenberg for points, because I think he deserves some points. But I can't.
Podium?
No. I mean, we've had 200 odd chances of that, but bless him, Nico hasn't got one yet. Wouldn't that be great, actually, Rosa? What a story that would be. If
would be great.
Hulkenberg for a podium.
That's Sam Burr's prediction then.
No, I didn't.
We'll hold him to that.
No,
quote that up, put it on BBC Sports socials.
No.
It was hopes and dreams. Hopes and dreams, wasn't it?
Hopes and dreams. He's a lovely guy and he deserves a podium, but this weekend isn't the time for that.
Points for Hull.
Yeah, points for Nico.
What about you, Rosanna?
Yeah. I'm going to go rogue. I'm going to say the two title contenders are going to take each other out at the first turn. Lewis Hamilton's going to take a victory, and Nico Hülkenberg will get onto the podium, and Franco Colapinto will score points yet again. There you go. I'm giving you a story.
Wow. I mean, you're wrong, Rosanna, completely, but it sounded great.
I'd sign up for that.
Well, you've got to sign up for it because you are going to be calling all the moves tomorrow for the Singapore Grand Prix. Your Formula E driver for McLaren, Sam Bird, and our lead commentator, Harry Benjamin, they will be right there. So will I. It's been a hot and sweaty evening here in Singapore, and it'll be more of the same, I'm sure, come race day. Hopefully you will join us then. But for now, from Sam, Harry, and me, Rosanna Tennant, this has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live.